Everything you thought you knew about American culture is missing a piece. Imagine a world where every drum beat, every song, every gesture carries a secret. A memory whispered by ancestors long silenced, echoing through generations, waiting to be heard once more. For centuries, African spirituality was hunted and erased by those who feared its power. Yet it survived, weaving itself into the music, the rituals, the words we use every day, flowing quietly through time, right under our noses. To understand how this spiritual truth survived, we must look back to a time when exiled people mourned, whispering prayers in secret, and holding on to the spirit that refused to be silenced. I need you to lean in closely now, because what you're about to hear is the truth no one ever told you, the truth they feared, the truth that could change everything you thought you knew about America forever. By the rivers of Babylon, the Israelites sat, shoulders bowed, faces buried in their hands. The air was thick with sorrow, their hearts heavy with the memory of the lands they had been torn from. The sun-warmed plains, the drums of their villages, the voices of their ancestors calling them home. Around them, their captors patrolled, eyes cold and unyielding, forbidding any song, any prayer, any ritual that might remind them of who they once were. Every memory burned like fire in their chests, yet they whispered prayers in secret, clinging to the spirit that refused to be silenced, holding on to truths their oppressors could never erase. Could these be the very ones the psalm spoke of? Exiled people mourning their homeland, longing for their God, their songs, their culture, living the lament that has echoed through centuries, from Babylon to the shores of America. Even when enslaved, they did not forget. And what survives today is more than culture. It is spiritual inheritance. Take the music you hear, jazz, gospel, blues, hip-hop. All carry hidden codes, rhythms, and messages that speak across time, connecting hearts to ancestors who refuse to be silenced. The call and response you feel, the rhythm that moves your body, is not accidental. It is African spirituality surviving centuries of oppression, surviving as prayers disguised as music, as messages disguised as art, reminding every heart that the spirit was alive even in those who were told they had no power. It is not just music. Gestures, celebrations, even words carry meaning, whispers of a wisdom that refused to be erased. From secret hand signs to hidden messages and chants, African spirituality shaped how communities survived, resisted, and thrived, passing courage, hope, and guidance across generations. Those who tried to erase it feared its truth, that African culture is resilient, wise, and eternal. And that truth is in you. I tell you again, lean in with me because I am about to show you with proof how these spiritual codes shaped identity, resistance, and culture, from the songs your grandparents hummed to the way you experience life today. By the end of this journey, you will witness the hidden truth they tried to erase, a truth that has quietly shaped generations. For centuries, African spirituality faced relentless attempts at erasure. The enslavers feared it, rulers dismissed it. Scholars ignored it, yet it did not vanish. It survived in whispers carried on the wind, in coded songs hiding messages of hope and secret prayers, in rhythms that refused to die, flowing quietly through generations, unseen but alive. Psalm 137 speaks of exiled peoples mourning by the rivers of Babylon, remembering their home, their rituals, their gods. These were the very ones the psalm spoke of, people carried from their lands longing for what was taken, holding sacred knowledge in their hearts. This is the spirit of survival, a people who refuse to forget, preserving wisdom across oceans and generations. Listen closely to the songs we call gospel, jazz, blues, or even hip-hop. The rhythms, the call and response patterns, the syncopated beats, these are not accidents. They are echoes of African ceremonies, prayers hidden in plain sight. Each drum beat was a heartbeat of resistance. Each rhythm a coded message, a way to survive without being silenced. Even when enslaved, African Americans preserved their spiritual identity in melodies and chants that taught hope, courage, and resilience. But the preservation goes far beyond music. It lives in gestures, in movements, in rituals, and even in greetings that carried meaning across generations. Each motion, each rhythm, each shared symbol holding the memory of a people who refused to be forgotten. Secret hand signs, rhythmical claps, and communal rituals all functioned as both spiritual practice and communication. They were warnings, they were teachings, and they were reminders of ancestral guidance that moved through hearts when voices could not speak freely. The Bible itself is full of gestures and signs conveying divine messages, and the same sacred principle survived in African spiritual practice, passed down through generations in ways unseen yet deeply alive. Those who sought to erase it could never fully destroy it, because the spirit itself cannot be silenced. African spirituality also lived in language, in the power of words and phrases and proverbs that carried encoded truths and divine wisdom through time. Many expressions that appear in African American vernacular today carry within them the soul of West and Central African philosophy, echoes of faith, resistance, and identity hidden within everyday speech. Proverbs, chants, and sayings were not mere words. They were tools to teach morality, to inspire resistance, and to maintain divine connection in ways that no oppressor could confiscate or punish. That knowledge remained alive, whispering through every household, every gathering, every act of community, flowing quietly through time like a sacred river that refused to dry. Consider the enormous pressure to conform, to erase identity, to abandon ancestral wisdom. And yet, African spirituality survived, not as a visible institution but as an undercurrent, shaping communities, guiding decisions, inspiring courage, and sustaining hope through centuries of silence and struggle. The Bible tells us that the Spirit moves unseen, in exiles, in whispers, in dreams. And so too did African spiritual principles survive, quietly, invisibly, yet powerfully, woven into the very breath of survival itself. Even today, that same influence lives on, woven into daily American life, in rituals of community, in celebrations, in music, in dance, in the deep reverence for ancestry, storytelling, and morality. It persists, alive, vibrant, and unbroken. People perform acts that seem secular, mundane, or ordinary, but their roots are sacred, coded, inherited, and deeply resilient, carrying within them the strength of generations who refused to forget who they were. These are practices that shaped identity, that preserved the essence of spirit, without ever being recognized as African spirituality, until now. African spirituality was not passive. It was a framework for resistance, empowerment, and survival, guiding hearts and minds through centuries of struggle and hope. From organizing communities, to sustaining faith during slavery, to inspiring leaders of liberation and civil rights, these sacred principles became a compass for the oppressed, moving in silence, yet shaping destinies in ways their oppressors could never understand. They feared the power of what they could not see, the strength that lived in prayer and song and rhythm and memory, the invisible fire that no chain could contain. Like the hidden wisdom in the Bible, the parables, the secret teachings, African spirituality moved through life in quiet ways, but with monumental impact, transforming pain into purpose, bondage into unity, and silence into power. So I ask you, do you feel me? Do you feel the echo of that spirit, that wisdom, that fire that still moves among us today? Unseen, unbroken, but forever alive. Today, you encounter this spiritual influence everywhere, in the rhythm of music, in the language people speak, in rituals, celebrations, and moral frameworks that shape entire communities. It shapes values, it builds cohesion, it defines identity, and yet so few realize how deeply it runs. It moves quietly, unseen, but it molds culture, it guides actions, it shapes beliefs, and it whispers truth through generations. This is the genius of survival, invisible, unacknowledged, yet fully alive. Psalm 78 speaks of passing down the knowledge of God to the next generation, and in that same divine rhythm, African spirituality followed its path, passing sacred wisdom quietly across centuries, heart to heart, soul to soul. What has been hidden in plain sight is finally being recognized. African spirituality is not a relic of the past. It is a living current, flowing through you, through your families, through your communities, calling you to remember who you are. To understand it is to reclaim identity, to honor ancestors, to awaken a force that shaped history silently but powerfully. The knowledge that was once feared is now yours to witness, to study, and to embrace. And this is only the beginning, so don't stand down, don't turn away, because what comes next will open your eyes to the rituals, the codes, the sacred practices that survived centuries of oppression, practices that continue to guide African Americans today, shaping culture, resistance, and identity in ways you may have never been taught. At this point, do you still believe Black Americans are just ordinary creatures? Across generations, their spiritual codes survived, hidden in plain sight, woven into rituals disguised as everyday actions. From subtle hand gestures in churches to secret dances in communities, each movement carried meaning, known only to those who remembered. These sacred codes allowed African Americans to preserve identity and wisdom beneath the watchful eyes of their oppressors. Like the parables in the Bible, the messages were hidden, but they were powerful. Lessons for survival, for faith, and for resistance, waiting for those with eyes to see and spirits ready to understand. Music remained one of the strongest vessels for African spirituality, a sacred bridge between heaven and earth, between memory and identity, between what was lost and what refused to die. Every rhythm, every chant, every harmony was intentional, a prayer wrapped in melody, a message hidden in sound. Even jazz and blues, born out of pain and suffering, carried ancestral wisdom, a spiritual transmission that connected generations to their roots, reminding them of who they were, even when the world told them to forget. Gospel songs preserved prayers and teachings when traditional worship was forbidden, ensuring that spiritual knowledge survived through vibration, through emotion, through sound that echoed the African drum beats which had guided their ancestors for centuries. African spirituality also survived through words, through the spoken rhythm of wisdom itself. Proverbs, sayings, and oral stories embedded lessons in morality, resilience, and spiritual awareness, passed from mouth to ear, from elder to child, across the fragile thread of time. Wisdom is like a baobab tree. No one person can embrace it, says an African proverb, a reminder that knowledge was collective, sacred, and meant to be preserved as a living flame shared by all. These teachings quietly shaped communities, guiding decisions, restoring hope, and holding people together even when the night was long and survival uncertain. Spirituality was never separate from resistance. It was the heartbeat of it, the fire that refused to go out. The enslaved and the oppressed drew strength from ancestral wisdom, from rituals whispered in the dark, from faith that wore the face of freedom long before freedom came. Biblical parallels abound. The Israelites exiled in Babylon held onto their God in secret, and so too did African Americans, integrating their spiritual systems into Christian worship, music, and communal life, creating a faith that could survive scrutiny and still nourish liberation. Even today, the influence is unmistakable, woven into every rhythm, celebration, and story. African spiritual principles continue to shape the moral and cultural fabric of the modern world, guiding identity, building community, and keeping the bond between the living and the ancestors unbroken. Though unrecognized by most, these echoes still move through us, molding choices, sustaining faith, and inspiring resilience in ways that many take for granted. To understand these truths is to reclaim what was never truly lost, to recognize that African spirituality is alive within us, is to honor the ancestors and embrace the resilience, the wisdom, and the creativity they preserved with their blood and breath. The forces that tried to erase this knowledge feared its power, and now, by learning it, you awaken that power again, reconnecting to the source that has silently guided generations. And this is only the beginning, because as we continue, you will see how these hidden spiritual practices shaped African American culture, from resistance movements to celebrations, from music to daily rituals, from sorrow to song. What was once feared and suppressed now speaks again, carrying the wisdom, the resilience, and the spirit of ancestors who refused to be forgotten. Now, let me ask you, are you ready to revisit the past and uncover the truths long forgotten, the stories buried, but not lost? Then this is your moment and this channel is your guide. Share your thoughts in the comments and type echoes of history to let the ancestors know you're still listening. Remember to share this video with someone who needs to hear it and subscribe so you never miss the echoes that follow. Give it a thumbs up, because every reaction, every comment, every share tells YouTube that these stories matter, that history still speaks, and that its echoes are alive.